So this is another laptop where I'll be repasting the CPU and digging out the dust. And right now I'm doing a Cinebench R23 before I clean it to see how much the performance increases once I clean it out. And as you can see, it's running quite hot, but unlike last time, I'm just gonna skip to when I get the score. So this is the last few seconds, 30 seconds, just to show you how hot the CPU is running. So I didn't record the score with the camera, but it was 2,640. So here I'm taking out the screws, and then I'm gonna flip it over and start trying to pry it open. See, I'm starting to make quite a bit of progress, getting it to open up like a mouth, but it's still stuck in the middle there. And it turns out it was stuck there because there was a screw there, and I didn't realize. I just kept prying at it. And there's a screw, taking it out, and boom, opens right up. I find it quite interesting, especially compared to my laptop, because on my laptop the bottom just comes off and you see everything. But this one, I had to take the keyboard off, and I'm not even seeing everything I would see if I took the back off my laptop. And now I'm just removing screws that look like they hold down the motherboard, and you can really see how dusty this is. This hasn't been cleaned ever. It's about 6 years old. So at this point I was sitting there for a while trying to pry the motherboard up, trying to figure out why I couldn't get it out. So I decided to take out the battery, see if that helped. And here comes the battery. This battery was pretty interesting because it wasn't hooked up with wires. It was kind of like a module to the motherboard, like how RAM hooks up. And after fiddling with the motherboard, I finally decided to take the speakers out, see if that would help even more. And now with the speakers out of the way, I was able to easily take the motherboard out, where I was able to see everything I would see on my laptop if I just took the bottom off. And it kind of sucks that this one's such a pain in the butt compared to my laptop. Now I'm unscrewing the cooler to see if any of the thermal paste is dried up. And one nice thing about this cooler, all the screws stay on the cooler, they don't fall off, which I think is quite nice. Which those screws didn't really do anything because it was taped to a bunch of other stuff, and to get this gray tape off, I had to take the SSD off, which had tape on it, so I had to take the tape off that. And there was also tape on the cooler. To separate that big RAM cover from the cooler, I'd have to take the tape off. Now I'm looking to see how I can take apart the fan to clean it better. And now that it's open, you can see how dirty and clogged it was. This heatsink is actually even smaller than the one on my laptop. So it was still clogged really bad, as you can see. Then after cleaning it, I put it back together because there was no reason to have it apart anymore. Then I gotta make a brush dust off the motherboard, and I use that to dust off everything, really. And in the process of doing something, the little piece of plastic fell off. But it didn't really break off, it more like popped off, so I was able to put it back on. And to put the cooler back on, I got my Arctic MX4 thermal paste, which I think I may have put too much on, but I don't think it's too big of an issue. And now to put this RAM cover back on, which was kind of tricky to put on. But what I didn't show was that I put another 4 gig stick of RAM in. So now it has a nice 12 gigs of RAM. Now putting the SSD back in. Now it's about time to put the motherboard back in. I'm going to dust the chassis and then put the motherboard back. Now time to put the motherboard back in. A bit of fiddling with of the motherboard, I discovered that the RAM cover fell off. And after reattaching it right and putting the motherboard in place, I'm reattaching the cables and then I'll screw it down. And believe it or not, I actually had no idea that there was thermal paste on my finger. But before I screw down the motherboard, I wanted to put the battery back in. Now to put this USB cover thing back on. Now, finally putting the keyboard back on. But first I had to reattach the ribbon cables for the touchpad, keyboard, and backlight, which actually broke the clip thing that holds the ribbon cable down. So in the end, I used duct tape to hold it down, which did work. The backlight works with the duct tape holding it down. And now to see if it works, which as you can see, it does. And now to start the second benchmark to see how much of a performance increase I got. And after skipping pretty much all of it, it now has got 2,778 points, and the previous number was 2,640, which is 138 points increase. And it stayed a lot cooler too. Instead of being in the high 70s or somewhere in the 80s, it was around the 60s in terms of temperature. And with that major success, this is the end of the video.